looking at all the research we've got for today, it really doesn't feel like we're looking at just one organization.
No.
It's more like a cross-section of the entire 20th century. I mean, we have military records from World War I, we have masterpieces from the Harlem Renaissance, labor manifests, civil rights timelines. It's all in here.
It's a huge, sweeping history. But, usually when we look at that starting point, 1914, we're looking at the big picture.
The macro level.
Exactly. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the dominoes falling in Europe, the start of the Great War. The whole world is, essentially catching fire.
Right. And even if you just zoom in on America, the racial climate is, well, it's toxic. I was reading about the Darktown Jubilee riots in Brooklyn. Here you have a movie that's just trying to show black actors like the great Burt Williams without blackface.
Just letting them be people on screen.
Yes. And the reaction was a riot. Complete chaos.
And that's the atmosphere. That's the powder keg you're talking about. Segregation is the law. Violence is common, and the world is exploding. And yet, the story we're diving into today is about building something in the middle of all that destruction.
That's the contrast that just hooked me. While everything's falling apart, 3 students at Howard University decide to build something new. Something based on unity. So today, we're doing a deep dive into the history, the really surprising origins, and the incredible legacy of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated.
And our mission really is to get past the surface stuff, the colors, the dates, and understand how these 3 men, A. Langston Taylor, Leonard F. Morse, and Charles Brown, looked at that crazy world in 1914 and decided the answer was a new kind of brotherhood.
I think the phrase that kept jumping out at me in the reading was this concept they had, the inclusive we versus the exclusive we.
That is everything. That distinction is the key to understanding this entire story. From 1914 all the way up to today, they weren't trying to build a fortress to keep people out.
They were building a foundation to bring people in.
Exactly.
So let's go back. Let's start with that origin story.
Yeah.
Because the location here, it's genuinely surprising. When you think of a big college fraternity starting, you imagine a lecture hall, maybe a library.
Right, surrounded by books and, busts of Greek philosophers.
Exactly. But the spark for Phi Beta Sigma doesn't happen in any of those places. It happens in Memphis, Tennessee in 1910 at a grocery store.
Bumpers Beale Street grocery store. I love that detail. I think it's almost poetic because it grounds the whole organization right there in the community where people are buying their food, not in some ivory tower.
And we're talking about A. Langston Taylor here. He's just a student at this point.
He's a young man having what he called a dull summer day in Memphis. And he starts talking to a guy who just graduated from Howard.
Okay.
And listening to this grad talk about campus life, about the Greek organizations, Taylor has this aha moment. He actually said later, Phi Beta Sigma was in the making from that day.
So he gets this idea, and he heads to Howard in November 1910. But this is where the timeline gets so interesting to me. He doesn't rush.
No, he doesn't.
He gets to campus. Alpha Phi Alpha's already there.
And he even admitted he quietly sidestepped the idea of pledging Alpha.
Then, in 1911, he watches Kappa Alpha Psi and Omega Psi Phi get started. He sees all this happening. He waits 3 whole years before he makes his move. Why? Why wait so long?
I think it's a masterclass in strategic patience. It tells you so much about him. It wasn't that he was anti-Greek or had a problem with those fraternities. He just knew that to build the specific thing he envisioned, that inclusive we, he couldn't just join something that already existed.
He had to build it from the ground up.
Yes, and he needed the exact right people. He wasn't going to compromise on that just to wear some letters a little sooner.
And those people ended up being Leonard F. Morse and Charles the Brown.
Morse was his former roommate, so he knew his character inside and out. He knew he could count on him. And Brown was handpicked. It wasn't random. It was a curated team.
And when they finally make it official, January 9th, 1914, they keep that same humble vibe. They don't rent some fancy hall.
Nope.
They meet in the bowling room of the 12th Street YMCA.
It's so humble, but the vision was anything but. They established the fraternity with 9 other guys joining them that first day, and by April, the Board of Deans at Howard had already officially recognized them. That speed tells you how clear their plan was. They knew what they were offering.
Let's unpack that offering then.
Yeah.
Every fraternity has a motto, but this one, culture for service and service for humanity, It feels so specific to that progressive era way of thinking.
It is. It creates this powerful link. It says that culture, education, knowledge, history isn't something you just get for yourself. You don't hoard it.
You get it so you can use it.
You acquire it specifically to deploy it as a tool for service.
And they bake this into 3 principles: brotherhood, service, and scholarship. But I found a note in the bylaws, and I wanted to get your take on this. It says the founders esteemed scholarship above all the former 2.
That's a crucial detail that a lot of people miss.
Yeah, above brotherhood and service, that just seems counterintuitive for a service organization.
Well, think about it this way. It's the engine. It's not that brotherhood isn't vital. It's that without scholarship, without that intellectual foundation, the service can't be effective. You can't fix systemic problems if you don't understand the system. You can't uplift a community without the knowledge or the skills.
So scholarship is the fuel for the service.
Precisely. And they wrapped it all in this great symbolism, the colors, blue for truth, white for purity, and the flower, the white carnation.
Which was chosen, in part, because it blooms in January.
Right.
A little practical.
Practicality meets poetry, but the really radical part, especially for 1914, was their membership criteria. We have to be honest about the class dynamics in the Black community at the time.
Okay, yeah. The paper bag test, colorism, family status, wealth, those were very real divides.
Huge divides.
Yeah.
And the founders of Sigma were explicit about rejecting all of it. They wanted members judged on merit and merit alone. They wanted to be a part of the community, not apart from it. They didn't care about your dad's money, your skin tone, or your hair. They cared about your potential to serve humanity. And that was a very disruptive idea for a social club back then.
That phrase, part of versus apart from, that really sets the stage for everything that comes next. And speaking of next, we have to talk about a document in this file that, it honestly made me stop and just stare. It's a massive what-if moment in history.
Oh, the merger letter. This is one of those great sliding door moments.
So set the scene. It's late 1915. Sigma is growing. They just charted their 2nd chapter, the beta chapter, at Wiley College in Texas.
Right, thanks to Herbert L. Stevens. So they're pushing south.
Meanwhile, Kappa Alpha Psi is really strong in the Midwest. So you have these 2 growing spheres of influence.
Geographically, it makes sense.
And on December 11, 1915, Elder W. Diggs, the founder of Kappa Alpha Psi, writes a letter to Phi Beta Sigma. And he proposes a merger. Not a partnership, a full-on merger.
Imagine the logic from his perspective. You combine these 2, you instantly create a national powerhouse. You lock down the Midwest, the East, the South. Strategically, it's a brilliant move.
It would have completely changed the game. The Divine Nine, as we know it, wouldn't exist in the same way.
It would have been a monolith, a massive consolidation of influence. But A. Langston Taylor gets the letter, talks with his board, and on December 18th, just 1 week later, he writes back.
And the answer is no.
A firm no. And this goes right back to that strategic patience we were talking about. Taylor didn't wait 3 years to build Sigma just to fold it into something else 2 years later.
Right.
He believed that specific culture, that inclusive we, that dedication to merit was unique and necessary. Preserving that sovereignty was everything. It let them grow on their own terms.
And they were going to need that strength.
Yeah.
Because the world was about to test them in a big way.
Yeah.
We mentioned the chaos of 1914. Well, now the U.S. is entering World War I.
And that creates this impossible paradox for Black soldiers. You're asked to go fight for democracy in France while you're being denied it at home in Alabama. But the records show Sigma men served with incredible distinction.
We have to mention the 369th Infantry, the Harlem Hellfighters.
Legendary. They spent more time in combat than any other American unit. And their band leader was a man named James Reese Europe.
A Sigma man.
A Sigma man. And he was a lieutenant, he led the Hellfighters band, and he is largely credited with introducing jazz to Europe.
Wow.
Think about that. He's taking the unique sound of Black America and playing it for the French while fighting a war.
And it wasn't just him. You had high-ranking officers too, like Colonel Howard Donovan Queen and Major Milton T. Dean.
Right. These were commissioned officers leading men into battle. But the war, it took a huge toll on the fraternity back home. Chapters just emptied out. You can't hold chapter meetings when everyone is in a trench in France.
And this is where Taylor's role shifts from founder to something more. The notes say he personally reached out to brothers after the war to bring them back.
He did. He was like a shepherd. He knew that after that trauma, these men needed that community more than ever. By June of 1919, he'd reactivated almost every chapter, and the timing couldn't have been more critical.
Why is that?
because that energy flows directly into the 1920s.
The Harlem Renaissance.
You literally cannot tell the story of the Harlem Renaissance without talking about Phi Beta Sigma,
Well, you've got Elaine Locke right at the heart of it.
the intellectual godfather of the entire movement. A Sigma, the first Black Rhodes Scholar, his 1925 essay, Enter the New Negro, it didn't just describe the era, it defined it. He argued that Black identity was becoming something new, something bold and self-assertive.
That sounds exactly like their scholarship principle in action.
It's the perfect example.
Yeah.
Using culture to change perceptions. And he wasn't the only one. You have James Weldon Johnson.
A giant. He led the NAACP, but everyone knows him for writing Lift Every Voice and Sing.
The Black National Anthem. Just think about those words. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. That is pure post-war resilience. It's that intersection of art and activism that Sigma was all about.
And speaking of activism, let's pivot to the social action side. Because while poets were writing, other members were organizing on the ground. And the range is just incredible. You go from poetry to labor unions with A. Philip Randolph.
Randolph is such a fascinating figure. He was a member of the Iota Sigma chapter, and he was actually reluctant at first. A sleeping car porter named Ashley Totten came to him and asked him to organize a union. Randolph hesitated.
But he eventually said yes,
He did, and that became the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters.
which is a total game changer. It basically created the black middle class by getting these men fair wages and dignity. And Randolph, he was the main architect of the 1963 March on Washington.
That's right. Everyone remembers Dr. King's speech, and for good reason, but Randolph was the one who built the whole event. He built the stage.
And then, if you fast forward just a little bit in the civil rights movement, you find another Sigma icon, John Lewis.
The courage of John Lewis. As the chairman of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, you have to talk about Bloody Sunday in Selma, 1965.
He's leading 600 marchers across the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
For the right to vote. And they are just met with this brutal, brutal violence. State troopers with billy clubs, tear gas. John Lewis had his skull fractured that day.
A fractured skull.
And he just kept going. He kept going, became a congressman for decades. It's the living embodiment of that service for humanity principle. He literally put his body on the line for his community.
I also want to mention someone who's maybe not as famous, but so important, Dr. Thomas W. Turner.
Yes, the botanist.
The first African-American to get a PhD in botany in the U.S. But he was also a founding member of the NAACP, and he took on this very specific fight. He fought for justice inside the Catholic Church.
He founded the Federated Colored Catholics. He was forcing this huge global institution to look at its own racism.
It just shows the incredible range of the members: labor leaders, politicians, poets, scientists.
All working under that same motto.
Now, we can't tell this story without talking about the other half of the equation. The files mention a constitutional bond with Zeta Phi Beta sorority. That sounds really formal.
It is. It's unique in the Divine Nine. It goes all the way back to a Sigma conclave in 1919. They authorized Taylor to help organize a sister organization.
And Zeta Phi Beta is founded in 1920.
And just like Sigma, the Zetas were founded to be different. They wanted to move away from what they saw as sorority elitism and focus on real-world problems: poverty, prejudice.
So that constitutional bond means they're legally linked.
That's right. They're separate organizations, but they are locked together in a shared mission. It's a true partnership, which makes them the only brother-sister Black Greek letter organizations to be bound that way.
So let's bring it to the present day. The organization that started with a chat in a grocery store now has over 700 chapters.
It's a global force. They have an international headquarters in D.C., chapters on multiple continents.
And the membership list is just stunning. It includes, as an honorary member, the 42nd President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
That is a very long way from Bumper's Beale Street grocery store in 1910.
It sure is. But when you look at what they're doing now, the DNA feels exactly the same. They partner with the March of Dimes, the CDC.
And their mentorship programs. They have a huge focus on mentoring young men from ages 8 to 18, getting them ready for college, for careers. They're still focused on giving the next generation that scholarship so they can provide the service.
And they've kept their magazine, The Crescent, going since 1916.
Still publishing, over 100 years of chronicling the work of the fraternity.
So when we step back, we look at this whole story, from the Patience of A. Langston Taylor to the trenches of World War I, the poems of the Harlem Renaissance, the skull fracture of John Lewis, all the way to today. What's the big takeaway for you?
For me, it all comes back to that moment in 1915, that refusal to merge. It proves that a diversity of approach is a strength. If they had merged, sure, we might have had a bigger organization, but we would have lost a specific, vital voice in the story of Black progress. Taylor New Sigma offered something unique, a brotherhood of merit, of inclusivity, of service, not of status. And protecting that vision is what allowed them to truly change the world.
That's powerful. And I want to leave our listeners with that what if to think about. I mean, really consider it. If A. Langston Taylor had signed that letter on December 18th, 1915, if he had said yes to merging with Kappa Alpha Psi, how different does the landscape of Black history look?
The ripple effect is massive.
Does the Harlem Renaissance happen in the same way without the specific culture Sigma provided for someone like Elaine Locke? Does the March on Washington get organized the same way without A. Philip Randolph's leadership style? It's just amazing how one decision, one no, can echo for a century.
One letter preserved an entire legacy.
Well, that is all the time we have for this deep dive into the Menace Sigma. We hope you learned something new about this incredible organization.
Always a pleasure to explore this history.
See you on the next Deep Dive.
Thank you for listening to this podcast brought to you by Quest Excel Multimedia LLC. If you would like to learn more about Phi Beta Sigma and its incredible rise to prominence in the early 20th century, as well as discover more about the 10 organizations that make up the League of Friendship, inclusive of the Divine Nine, please consider purchasing a copy of Before You Pledge. Essential information you should know about Black Greek letter organizations and the dynamics of pledging in a culture of hazing by Dr. Michael J. Winfield, with a foreword by J.T. Childs Jr. available on Amazon.com. Or you can leave a message on the message board at www.questexcelmultimedia.com. Please include your contact information, and we will take it from there. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.